Okay, listener name, you ready for this? This deep dive is taking us right into the heart of, well, internet weirdness, I guess you could say.
Definitely a unique corner of the internet.
We're talking about Reddit conspiracy theories, and this one,
Yeah.
this one you send in, it's called the Great Reddit Conspiracy, the Midwit Man Baby Theory. I gotta say, the title alone had me laughing out loud.
Yeah, it's catchy, but it's more than just a funny title, right? It's actually, I think, a pretty sharp look at how internet culture works, how information spreads online.
Right, like it's poking fun at all those stereotypes about Reddit, but
They
it's also making some really interesting points about the platform itself.
It's like the author took all those exaggerated ideas about Reddit users and thought, okay, what if this was all part of a master plan?
Exactly. And they came up with this hilarious archetype, the midwit man baby.
Yes, the midwit man baby, which, just to be clear, is this idea of someone who thinks they're way smarter than they actually are, and then they combine that with the whole entitled man-child stereotype, and boom.
You've got yourself a midwit man baby. And the theory claims there's a whole secret society dedicated to creating these midwit man babies. They call it the Society of the Keyboard Warriors. I mean, come on, it's genius.
And their weapon of choice, the algorithm of absurdity. It's this idea that the algorithm, it actually favors content that's, well, kind of absurd.
Yeah, like all those listicles, memes, hot takes with zero nuance. It's like they're describing my Reddit feed.
Right, and it makes you wonder, are we being played? Is there something about the way these platforms are designed that actually encourages this kind of superficial engagement?
That's what I find so fascinating about this whole conspiracy theory. It's like it's holding up a mirror to our own online behavior and saying, hey, maybe you're part of the problem too.
And it gets even better. It talks about how these midwit man babies, they basically communicate through memes, right? Like it's this way to avoid actually having to, defend their arguments or engage in real debate.
Oh, absolutely. And the best part, it claims the Reddit karma system is actually making it worse.
Right,
Like
right.
it's rewarding people for just posting more, not posting better.
Right, because the more you post, the more upvotes you get, and suddenly it's a numbers game, not about quality discussion anymore. Makes you think twice about chasing those internet points, doesn't it? Makes you wonder, like, are we sacrificing actual intellectual curiosity just to rack up those meaningless internet points?
And then what happens? A whole generation grows up thinking this is how you engage with ideas, right? Just spitting out memes and hot takes without ever really having to back them up.
Right, and that's what this piece really makes you think about. It's like, what's the end game here if we keep going down this
A
road?
world ruled by memes.
Well, they frame it in this funny way, right? Like the ultimate goal is to create a society easily swayed by, well, memes.
World domination through cat videos. Who knew?
It sounds ridiculous, but when you actually think about it, we've seen how easily misinformation and propaganda can spread through these kinds of easily digestible formats.
It's almost like we're hardwired to crave that kind of instant gratification, even when we know it's not good for us.
Absolutely, it's like junk food for the brain. Easy to consume, but not exactly nutritious.
And it can be addictive too, right? You get stuck in this loop. The algorithm feeds you more of what you've already engaged with, and suddenly you're in this echo chamber where everyone agrees with you.
Exactly. And that's another key point this piece brings up, this whole idea of echo chambers.
Like how these online spaces, especially on a platform like Reddit with all its niche subreddits, they can actually become breeding grounds for confirmation bias, right?
Totally. Because when you're only surrounded by people who already agree with you, it's easy to start thinking your perspective is the only right one. You lose sight of the bigger picture.
It's like that saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. But online, it's so easy to accidentally create a room full of people who all think they're the smartest.
Exactly. And that's where things can get, well, a little dangerous. Because without those different viewpoints, without that opportunity for real debate, for critical thinking, we stop questioning things, we stop learning, and it becomes so easy to get manipulated.
So how do we break free? This piece doesn't exactly offer a step-by-step guide for escaping the algorithm of absurdity, does it?
It doesn't, but it does encourage us to be more mindful about how we're engaging online.
Like be more aware of the forces at play, the algorithms, the echo chambers, the fact that it feels good to get those little dopamine hits from likes and upvotes.
Exactly. It's
Mm.
about recognizing that and making conscious choices about how we interact with these spaces instead of just letting ourselves be led around by the nose.
So less scrolling, more critical thinking.
Exactly. It's about being an active participant in your online experience, not just a passive consumer, right?
So instead of letting our feeds curate our reality for us, we need to be more intentional about what we consume and who we engage with.
100%. And that means sometimes venturing outside of our comfort zones, seeking out different perspectives, even if they make us a little uncomfortable.
Because ultimately, isn't that how we learn and grow? By being willing to admit when we're wrong, by being open to new ideas, even if they challenge our existing beliefs.
Absolutely. It's about having a bit of intellectual humility, recognizing that none of us have all the answers, you know? And it's about coming to these online discussions with a genuine desire to learn and understand, not just to score points or prove how smart we are.
So it's not just about being meme aware, it's about being information aware. It's about understanding how these online platforms are designed, how they're trying to manipulate our attention, and then making conscious choices within that system.
Yeah, it's about reclaiming our agency in this digital age and remembering that we can use these platforms as tools for good, for connection, for learning, instead of letting them use us.
So, listener name, as you keep scrolling through those Reddit threads, keep this in mind. Are you in the driver's seat of your online experience, or are you letting the algorithm steer?
Because the internet can be an incredible force for good in the world, but only if we use it wisely, right?
It really is like this constant back and forth, right? Trying to figure out how to get the good stuff without getting like sucked into the void.
Totally. It's a balancing act, for
Yeah.
sure.
So where does that leave us? We've talked about all these potential pitfalls, all these forces working against us online, but what can we actually do about it? How do we navigate this digital world, especially a place like Reddit, and make it, a more positive and enriching experience?
Well, I think it all starts with awareness, right? Like we've been saying, be mindful of the algorithms, the echo chambers. But it's also about being self-aware, taking a step back and asking ourselves, why are we even here?
Yeah. Like, why are we spending hours scrolling through Reddit? What are we hoping to get out of it?
Exactly. Is it connection? Is it a laugh? Are we just bored? Probably a bit of everything, right?
Totally. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. Unless, like you said, it's all on autopilot and we're not even really thinking about why we're doing it.
Exactly. So that's step one, self-awareness. Step two, I'd say, is curation.
Curation. Like we're museum curators, but for our online lives.
Exactly. Think about it. We curate everything else, right? We choose the books on our shelves, the clothes in our closets, so why not our online experience?
Okay, I like that. So how do we curate our digital lives?
Yeah.
Unsubscribe from everything and live in blissful ignorance.
Well, that's one way to go, but maybe not the most practical. It's more about being selective about who we follow, what content we engage with.
So instead of just letting the algorithm feed us whatever it thinks we want, we need to be more proactive. Seek out those voices that challenge us, that inspire us, even if they're not always the ones shouting the loudest.
Exactly. And just as important, maybe even more important, set some boundaries, right? Limit that screen time, make sure we're not just constantly plugged in.
It's about finding that balance, isn't it? Between the digital and the real world. Because as much as I love a good Reddit deep dive, I know there's a whole lot of life happening offline too.
Absolutely. And sometimes the best way to get out of that echo chamber, that online bubble, is to just step away from the screen altogether and, actually go experience the world.
So to wrap it all up, it's about being aware, being intentional, or being present, both online and off. It's about remembering that the internet is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or bad.
Beautifully said. And remember, it's a process, not a finish line. We're all figuring this out as we go.
And hey, if we stumble across a hilarious meme or two along the way, well, that's just a bonus.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance.
Well said. So, listener name, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the weird and wonderful world of Reddit. From midwit man babies to the algorithm of absurdity, it's been quite a ride.
Just remember, the internet can be an amazing place for connection, for learning, for all sorts of things, but it's up to us to make it that way.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and most importantly, stay engaged.